Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, August 30th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game is in one day. Yes, tomorrow. We're almost there. Hang in there. We're almost there. The game against Michigan in 92 days. When it is game week at Ohio State, it is Tale of the Tape week at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tale of the Tape, a long-standing, very popular, very, very deep dive feature that Kevin Noon has been writing for years and years. Kevin, first of all, welcome to the show. Second of all, let people know a little bit about how you got started with Tale of the Tape and what they can expect if they read it.
Yeah, I've been writing Tale of the Tape for years and years, as you put it, and I decided, how can I make myself more busy? Let's write between 1,500 and 5,000 words of the upcoming game. I try to beg off of it every year. I'm like, you guys don't really read this, do you? And they're like, oh, we love it. This is like one of our favorite things, certainly that you do, Kevin. I'm like, well, okay, I guess I can't get away from it. But yeah, it was really a case of I wasn't finding enough of a deep dive out there in the space. So I'm like, well, I'm going to do it. And there are parts that if I could start it over, I would do a little bit differently. But I mean, it's a good chance of looking at when Ohio State's on offense and the opponent's on defense, vice versa, and then special teams. Generally, during the bowl season, I break it into a couple of pieces and go even deeper, which is hard to believe. But this is also one of these pieces that the first couple weeks of the season are not great because, it's great because I write it, but it's not great because there are no data points. And especially when you're talking about like a lower level group of 5 team where the roster probably turns over, their best players probably transfer out and chasing that NIL, chasing that, better opportunity, better exposure. We're just doing a lot of identifying names that you're going to want to keep an eye on and things like that. And then generally by October, we're rounding into form. And then by November, these pieces are really humping. I'm writing for 3 days on it just to try and make sure that I can deliver the best information to our readers.
And these are all exclusive to members at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We always talk about all the benefits you get from being a member. This is one of those big benefits. And a lot like this year's Ohio State schedule, it does get better and better as the season goes. So we're going to start with Akron. You probably do not need a deep dive to know that Ohio State is somewhat likely to beat Akron at the very least on Saturday. But you probably don't know a whole heck of a lot about the Zips or where they might be better or where they might be not so good this year. So we're going to be breaking that down into sort of 4 different segments of the game. Let's start with the fact that, number one, Ohio State favored by about 7 touchdowns. So that's the number has come down a little bit. It started over 50. It's down like 48.5 now. So still anyone's game. But let's start where you start with all of these games. In the trenches, it's sort of a college football coach cliche. The games are won and lost in the trenches. The reason it's a cliche is because that's where games are won and lost. So the biggest question maybe around this year's Ohio State team has been the offensive line. So what does that look like? What does this matchup look like between the Ohio State offensive line and Akron's defensive line?
Yeah, Akron actually has a relatively decent defensive line, all things considered. Now, am I saying like it's a Big Ten defensive line? No. But this is not, if Akron is like 128 out of 134 in Division I, their defensive line and their linebackers say otherwise. When we talk about Akron's offense, you're going to understand why they're like 128 out of 134 or something like that. CJ Nunnally is like the main weapon that they have on the defensive line. He's a talented edge. I'm not going to go so far as to when Ohio State opened the season several years ago against Buffalo and the world was introduced to Khalil Mack. But I think CJ Nunnally is somebody that you're going to have to keep an eye on. I think he's somebody that Josh Fryer and Josh Simmons are going to have to battle for a while because I think he's pretty good. And then you look at the rest, Bennett Adler, LaJoshua Jackson, and then they got a transfer from University of New Hampshire. No, not a Day, not a Kelly. Nathan Kapongo. I think that it's probably, if it's not the best unit on Akron, it's the second best unit. I think, honestly, when you look at the front 7 for the Zips, that is going to be where the challenge is. And that's going to be the difference between Ohio State winning this game by 35 and Ohio State winning this game by 60.
And we talked mostly about the front four there, a little bit getting into the linebackers, which are not bad. I mean, it's a decent unit there. This is also the back seven of this defense, especially the secondary. There's been a bunch of transfers in that have sort of impacted the roster. There's been a lot of roster turnover there, like a lot of schools have gone through. Who are the names to know really in the back seven?
Well, we'll start at linebacker, and Antavius Fish and Brian McCoy are both of the main guys at linebacker. I mean, I think between the two of them, I think 180 combined tackles, 190 combined tackles. I didn't put that in there, but they are going to be the guys you're going to want to keep an eye on there. Yeah, the secondary itself is going to be very fluid. They picked up transfers from Syracuse and from Cornell. But I think that the guy that you want to look at there is Darian Lewis. He's not a huge corner, only at 5'10". Akron probably not going out and getting a lot of talented 6'1" corners. If you're a talented 6'1" corner, there's a program in Columbus I would probably want to talk to you more so than the program in Akron. They're bringing in Paul Lewis III from Cornell. So once again, Akron having to go into a smaller classification to be able to get its guys. He's a safety, 6'2", 212, and he is somebody that is a ball hawk, and just you're going to want to keep an eye on him.
All right, so that's the defense. That's the good side of the conversation in terms of Akron. The offense, boy, it's going to be a little bit of a work in progress, and this Ohio State defense should be at least pretty darn good this year. So probably looking, and we'll start again in the trenches, a much bigger mismatch in the trenches potentially there between the Akron offensive line and the Ohio State defensive line. It feels like the Zips may not be working with a whole lot of time to make things happen before they are getting swallowed up in the backfield by someone very big and very fast and wearing a red jersey.
Yeah, I think Akron's really only notable returning starter on the offensive line is the center, Tyler Williams. They bring in Lawrence Seymour from Miami. But again, this is a line that is going to be very much in flux. And people will be like, yeah, well, lots of programs have to go around and make changes yearly. But again, Akron is the quintessential have not. And they don't really have a lot of depth. And it's not like that if you're at Akron if you are Akron, that you can develop players and stash them and then be able to have them later. I mean, if you show any promise, I guarantee you in this portal era, you're going to have, 30 people ringing your high school football coach asking if you're happy where you're at right now. And so I think that is one of the biggest differences in a Power 5 or Power 4 team and a group of 5, group of 6. We want to put the Pac-12 there with its 2 teams. I don't know. I haven't really landed on my verbiage there, but I think that's one of the big differences is that, your lesser teams, unless you're at the very top echelon of group of 5, if you're a Boise State or somebody like that, and, we haven't been talking about Boise for a couple of years, maybe you are able to develop a little bit more. Maybe you're in a better position to cannibalize other schools, but, the amount of Division I football programs in the state of Ohio, there are no secrets. You can't hide a player. You can't stash a player for a couple of years. So this is wash, rinse, repeat. This is Akron. This is Akron until we have some sort of change in how college football works. Sorry.
The transfer portal does kind of go both ways. It's like one of those doors on a kitchen in a restaurant, kind of goes both directions. And the Zips have benefited from bringing in some folks in the portal. They have not just lost talent. This is a little bit, this game, we're sort of looking through the roster. I'm like, oh, yeah, you get to the quarterback on the roster. It was the same thing a couple of years ago when James Blackman, the former Florida State quarterback, was playing for Arkansas State. It was like, oh, yeah, that guy. I remember him. You have one of the, oh, yeah, that guys playing quarterback for Akron. So let everyone know who they can keep an eye out for on Saturday at the Horseshoe.
Yeah, their quarterback is Ben Finley, previously of NC State and Cal. And so he's on his 3rd school, which once again means that he hasn't been able to really win the job anywhere. I mean, he certainly won the job at Akron. I have seen Finley on the field before. I think I seem to remember. Sometimes you do this long enough and you kind of like force yourself to remember things that maybe didn't happen. But I seem to remember him playing with the Wolfpack. he had some numbers with Cal. So, I mean, he has played. He's not somebody who has just kind of been fourth team and is just on his third school. So, you're gonna have to see that. But, one of the weakest points of a 2-10 Akron team in 2023 was quarterback. And Ben Finley is going to be a dramatic upgrade. Now, is that going to be enough to be able to beat Ohio State? Hell no. Is that going to be enough to beat any of the other, Power 4 teams on their schedule? No. But your hope is that Ben Finley rounds into shape when you get into league play, and maybe you can make a little noise. But when you're a team that has won 6 games in 3 years, that's kind of difficult.
And in case you're wondering, if you remember anything about the last Ohio State Akron game, well, it's probably the Kyle McCord starting. But if you remember anything about the Akron side of things, they had a quarterback named DJ Irons who was running around and made some plays with his legs and just kind of made things just a little more interesting than Ohio State fans probably would have wanted. Ben Finley, -2 career yards rushing, so probably not going to be the same issues this week that they faced against DJ Irons. This is not necessarily the single most compelling game on the Ohio State football schedule, but what to you, Kevin, is maybe the most interesting thing you're going to be watching for, or the most interesting, I'm not going to limit you to the Akron side of the ledger, but what is maybe the most interesting thing you're going to be watching for on Saturday?
Honestly, I mean, we write for Buckeye fans, so I'm going to be interested in substitution patterns, how much time players get, things of that nature. Sure, I could talk about Charles Kellum, who is going to be the leading returning rusher for Akron, who had 4 carries for 5 yards last year. I mean, nobody's going to want to read about that, but I think everybody's going to want to know about what Will Howard did. I think everybody's going to know what J.J. Smith did. I think people are going to want to see how the linebackers, how with 3 linebackers in 2 positions, because certainly Akron is not a team that's going to warrant a 4-3 from Ohio State. I mean, how much does Sonny play? How much does C.J. Hicks play? How much does Cody Simon play? I think all of that is really going to be the case. I mean, this is going to be a situation of where even if Ohio State wins this game 60-0, there are going to be people disappointed that it wasn't 70-0 or 80-0 or whatever. So this is a game that it's going to be nice to get out there, hit somebody in a different color jersey, be able to, put some things on tape. We know that one of the biggest improvements a team makes is from week 1 to week 2. So I kind of want to see all of those types of things. And then, outside of that, you just kind of want to, you just want to see what happens when they're going against a team that maybe doesn't know what plays you're going to be running. Oh, and I also want to see how helmet communications work. And, whether or not we get a real answer in the post game, I don't know if we will, but I'll be curious. I want to look at total plays. I want to look at total drives. I want to see how those numbers stand up to other years, because this is, a pretty seismic change in how, in how the sausage is made.
Yeah, there are going to be a number of seismic changes in college football this year, starting with the helmet communication that he just mentioned, but of course, lots of other things. New teams and new conferences. Ohio State has a conference game out in Eugene, Oregon in just over a month, as crazy as that is to say. 12-team playoff, all that fun stuff. I can't wait. It is going to be so great to have the college football season. We've waited 9 months for this college football season to start. It is finally here. We will be there on Saturday. Kevin, Tony, and I out there covering pregame, covering postgame, covering the game, photo galleries, player interviews, pregame show, postgame show, probably some behind-the-scenes features if we can make that happen again this year. Lots of different stuff for you. That's all going to be at BuckeyeHuddle.com and YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Should have a very fun and active game thread as usual on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby's Steakhouse. That is all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope you'll join us there. That is where Kevin, Tony, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting. And our whole team of X's and O's gurus there as well to make you a smarter football fan. All at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.